Hello, Joe O'Connell, Sandpiper Pump. Today we're going to show you how to install an airing kit into our SO5 non-metallic. Sitting on the bench we have examples of our Sandpiper genuine parts, wet end kit and airing kit. The rebuild you're going to see today is accurate in man, method, and machine, but for video purposes, some parts of the work performed have been condensed in time. At any point during the presentation, please pause this video until you've completed any phase of the process. The pump we're using today in this presentation has been built new and is considerably easier to work with than a pump that's been used in a process. Additional time may be required in the preparation and separation of parts and components during the rebuild. While the pumps are different in size and flow, the techniques and procedures used in the rebuild of the SO5 are also applied to the commonality of the SO7 and the S10.
Identifying which kit is required for your repair has become easier on newer pumps with the permanently affixed metal serial number tag that now indicates the wet end and airing kit information for the pump. Kit information can also be found in the service and operating manual. Sandpiper genuine replacement parts, wet end and airing kits provide a bill of material of the components included in the kit. All items included in the kits are components that Sandpiper recommends replacing when rebuilding a pump. The pump we are using today is an example of the ease of kit installation. Always consult your respective service and operating manual before performing any maintenance on your pump. Service and operating manuals include composite repair parts drawings, repair parts list, and torque specifications. For service and operating manuals or more information, visit us on the web at www.sandpiperpump.com. Always remember that safety is the highest priority. When working on or around any equipment, always follow the correct safety procedures. Always read and follow the safety warnings and instructions in the service manual before any work is started on the pump. For more information, see the Warren Rupp video on safety at sandpiperpump.com.
Our rebuild today is going to consist of main air valve, pilot valve, gaskets, U-cup seals, and actuator plungers.
These are the recommended tools used with the rebuild. While the sizes may change based on the model, the type will remain the same. Torque wrench, ratchet, small slotted screwdriver, needle nose pliers, sockets and or wrenches, 1/2 inch, 9/16 inch, 3/4 inch.
Let's get started. For ease of assembly and disassembly today, we're going to be using a 3/8 inch impact gun. We're going to start by taking off the discharge manifold.
Once you have all the bolts removed, go ahead and take the discharge manifold and set it aside. And remove the check balls in the seats. Flip the unit over. You want to go ahead and take the suction manifold off next. Take the suction manifold, set it aside. Remove the seats, check balls. Flip the unit up on its side, and you want to take off one of the outer chambers. With the outer chamber removed, we now want to loosen the diaphragm assembly. When loosening the diaphragm assembly, you may get the diaphragm rod. That's okay. Pull it out, set it aside, flip the unit up, and remove the other outer chamber. Take the chamber, diaphragm assembly, set those aside, and we're going to take off the main air valve assembly. Remove the main air valve assembly, discard the gasket, then we'll go ahead and remove the air inlet cap side. Loosen up the bolts. You may want to pull the actuator plungers out of the way. We'll allow the pilot valve to be removed easily. Take the pilot valve, the gaskets, and you can discard those. We're going to remove the actuator plunger bushing, star ring, and O-ring next. First you want to push the actuator plungers out and discard those. Small screwdriver, you want to remove the retainer, and then the bushing. You may have to wedge something into the port of the bushing to get it out, and the O-ring. Flip the unit over and repeat the process on the opposite side. Now we'll remove the U-cup seals. Take a pair of needle nose pliers and just grab hold of the U-cup and pull it out of the port there. Now we want to inspect our intermediate. We can open up our air in kit now, set the components out, start to reassemble the pump. First we're going to install our U-cup seals. You want to apply a light amount of grease to the U-cup seal and a light amount of grease to the bore where the U-cup goes. U-cup has two faces, a flat face and an open face. You want the flat face to go in against the intermediate. Push it into the receiver bore there and make sure it's seated properly into the receiver. And you want to repeat the process for the opposite side. Again, ensuring the flat face of the U-cup is installed facing the center of the pump. Next we'll install our actuator plunger O-ring, bushing, and retainer. First thing you want to do is apply a little grease to the bore. Next you want to push the actuator plunger O-ring down into the receiver at the bottom of the bore. You want to make sure that's fully seated down at the bottom of that receiver. Next we'll push in the bushing. The bushing can be put in either way. It has no face to it. Push it all the way down into the receiver. Then we'll install our star ring. Our star ring retainer is concave. You want the open cup face of the star ring to be upward. You want to line up the star ring in the bore and you want to push it down in. Once you have it pushed in, you want to make sure that each finger on the star ring is seated below the lip in the bore. Repeat the process for the opposite side. Install your O-ring, making sure that it's seated into the bottom of the bore. Your bushing, then your star ring. Next we'll install our actuator plungers. We want to put a light amount of grease on the actuator plungers before installing them into the bore there. You can access the port for the actuator plungers through the pilot valve port. Once you get it through the hole, you want to work the actuator plunger back and forth. You want to do that for both sides. Next we'll install our pilot valve. Pilot valve comes pre-lubed. You want to push the spool out, check and make sure there's grease on the O-rings. Next we'll put on our gasket. Gasket is non-directional, can go on either face. Install our pilot valve. You want to make sure that the actuator plungers are pushed out of the way. Then our air inlet cap gasket and our air inlet cap. Just want to make sure that you line up the bolt holes on all the components. Once you get the bolts threaded in, you want to tighten them down in a crossing pattern to the torque specifications you're going to find in your service and operating manual. We'll go to the opposite side and install our new main air valve assembly. Take our gasket, again non-directional, can go in either way. Line it up with the bolt holes, thread in our 4 bolts, and then you want to torque those down in a crossing pattern. You'll find that torque specification in the service manual. Next, we want to install 1 bumper onto the diaphragm rod, and we want to apply a light amount of grease onto the rod. On Sandpiper pumps, there is a rubber seal that goes behind the Sandpiper diaphragm. You want to line that up to the bolt holes in the intermediate, and then you want to install the diaphragm assembly with the rod into the intermediate. Make sure you line up the diaphragm, the seal, and the intermediate bolt holes. Now we can install one of our outer chambers. You want to inspect the outer chamber. Inspect the machine faces and radius of the chamber for damage or material buildup. Scarring, scratches, or material buildup can be cleaned up by using emery paper, crocus cloth, or fine sandpaper. Ensure the radius on the inside of the chamber is maintained during cleanup. Replace the chamber if necessary. When aligning the outer chamber, be sure that the discharge port faces the nameplate. Get all your bolts threaded in. You go ahead and tighten those down in a crossing pattern. You want to flip the unit over, install the new bumper onto the diaphragm rod, place your seal on the inner chamber, line the bolt hole up, thread the diaphragm assembly onto the rod. Then you want to torque the assembly to the rod. If you do not achieve hole alignment when torquing, you always want to continue tightening to the next bolt hole. You never want to loosen the diaphragm to achieve bolt hole alignment. Once you get the alignment, you can align the rubber seal underneath. And you can reinstall the remaining outer chamber. Again, inspect the outer chamber. When aligning the outer chamber, be sure that the discharge port faces the nameplate. Install all your bolts, and then you can tighten those down in a crossing pattern. Make sure you tighten them down in a crossing pattern across all 8 bolts. Next, with the unit with the suction side up, we want to install our check balls and our seats. Seats are non-directional. Either face can face up. And take our manifold and install it next. We want to inspect the manifold for scarring, damage, or material buildup. Check the casting for wear. Check the port for thread integrity. Repair or replace as needed. Emery paper, crocus cloth, or fine sandpaper can be used to clean the manifold up. Orientation of the manifold is based on process requirements and may be reinstalled in either direction. Once you have all the bolts threaded in, you want to tighten them down in a crossing pattern across all 8 bolts. Now we can flip the unit over. We want to inspect the manifold for scarring, damage, or material buildup. Check the casting for wear. Check the port for thread integrity. Repair or replace as needed. Emery paper, crocus cloth, or fine sandpaper can be used to clean the manifold up. We'll install our seats. Seats are non-directional. Either face can go up. and our check balls. We're ready to tighten our manifold assembly down to our pump. Orientation of the manifold is based on process requirements and may be reinstalled in either direction. Remember to tighten all the bolts down in a crossing pattern across all 8 bolts. There may be a gap between the chamber and the elbow. This is okay. The sealing surface is between the seat and the elbow and the seat and the chamber, not between the elbow and the chamber. If you have an encapsulated muffler, you can remove the assembly from your old main air valve assembly. Loosen the 4 screws, take the element off, place it onto your new main air valve assembly, and tighten the 4 screws down.
That completes the installation of our airing kit. If you're doing a complete rebuild, see our wet side video, or for additional information, find us on the web at sandpiperpump.com or contact after sales support at service.warnerup@idexcorp.com. Thanks.